Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the weather warnings as we still have yellow rain warnings issued in the south and the west that is going to continue to be very unsettled over the next few days. However, as we run into the weekend, as we see in the UKV, it is remaining unsettled but is turning pretty cold with north to northwesterly winds starting to push in, turning a lot of the precipitation, especially in the north and over higher ground, to snow. And as we head into next week, snow could come further southwards as well. There's a lot of uncertainty where the cold and the mild divide will be, but wherever that does set up, we could be looking at some major snow in places next week. We'll run through the various longer range models, look at the GFS, GEM, ECMWF and the ensembles to see what they're showing for next week, and we'll focus on the GEM because it produced a huge snowfall event for a lot of England and Wales, with a warm sector and a weather front bumping into that cold air, but sort of sliding into Europe and just giving sort of 12 hours of heavy snow in places. So we'll have a look at that. Of course, it is speculative, but there really is quite a high chance that some areas do see a lot of snow in the next week to 10 days. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, if you start on the live radar, you can see a band of heavy rain is pushing in from the west at the moment. Majority of this, as I said, is falling as rain, but there is a bit of winteriness over northern England and Scotland, and those freezing levels, as we head into the weekend, will be lowering significantly. Some very torrential rain here, even some thunder and lightning within some of these areas of precipitation that will be moving further eastwards. I'm recording this around 2:15, so by the time you're watching this heavy rain is probably pushing into the London, southeast and East Anglia sort of areas, and yes, could be producing significant rainfall, and with very saturated ground already, there could be some flooding issues in places. And we've got weather warnings issued for the south and the west from this, and we'll have a look at that in a minute. But elsewhere, just a lot of torrential rain and these heavy bands of showers moving in. Initially, we thought these were going to be a few showers, but they have become a lot more organised in the last 24 hours or so within the models, and now in reality. And yes, a lot of rain is falling within these, and it's just going to remain very unsettled. Another deluge looks likely to be arriving tomorrow, before Friday looks like it's going to be a better day. Now, the one thing with this is because the wind is straight in from the west, it's relatively mild for this time of year. Again, nothing exceptionally mild, but sort of 10 degrees or so, a good sort of 3 or 4 degrees above average for the time of year. And you can see with the yellows are those tints getting into the sort of the low double digits. Further northwards over higher ground, of course, it is colder, but again, nothing exceptional for this time of year. But as I said, next week, you'd expect these lighter blues pretty much widespread, with most areas not looking likely to get much above 4 or 5 degrees at best, and some areas will be even colder than that. Now, if you do have a look at the UK Met Office weather warnings, we've got a yellow rain warning issued from tonight at 9 PM until tomorrow. Now, this rain warning isn't actually for the heavy rain that's pushing through now, even though that rain really is quite torrential, as you saw on the live radar, and probably does warrant a warning in places. But this is persistent heavy rain will affect parts of Wales and southwest England through Wednesday night and Thursday. Again, if we have a look at the further details, you can see perhaps 15 to 30 millimetres widely, maybe 70 to 90 millimetres over higher ground, with very strong west or southwesterly winds expected, with 45 miles per hour inland, 60 miles per hour along the coast. High impacts and increasing in likelihood as well. So somewhere within this could see an amber warning issued, and we'll have to see what happens with that. Of course, this does come in at 9 PM this evening. We're only 7 hours away from the time I'm recording this, so I do doubt they will change it to an amber, but if that rain starts to fall and is more intense than expected, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a small amber warning issued somewhere. Into Thursday, we've still just got that warning issued as well, but as I said, it does expire at 5 PM, hopefully with that rain subsiding earlier. So if you now have a look at the UKV and see what the precipitation and the temperature is doing over the course of the next 5 days, you can see that heavy rain spreading through at the moment. Actually quite a lot more organised in reality than the UKV was even showing here, and heavier as well. Now it will spread further eastwards and sort of dissipate away this evening before the next batch of pretty heavy rain pushes in from the west. Pretty big wall there of moderate to heavy precipitation, and you can see why we've got that weather warning issued for the south and the west, as heavy rain just keeps coming on in this conveyor belt of moisture, pushing into the far southwest, and continue to producing a lot of rain, spreading eastwards as well. Quite a miserable morning for many. Again, Hopefully a lot of the heaviest precipitation comes through overnight, but still a lot in the south through the rush hour in the morning, and heavy showers in the north as well. Now, all eyes are onto Friday, where it does look generally drier. No big walls of rain anywhere, but a few showers in the north and the west. But it's this low pressure system that slides through. Again, nothing too unusual, but it is slightly further southerly tracked than other low pressure systems have been, producing a lot of heavy rain through Saturday morning. Again, pretty miserable, and a bit of winteriness in the north. But as it pulls away, we start to pull in pretty bitterly cold air in from the north. A lot of these showers turning to snow inland, even areas in the south west there over the higher ground, a couple hundred metres above sea level, seeing snow. And look what happens to the precipitation charts as we head into Sunday. Look to our north, an absolute flood of wintry showers pushing in, just the sign of things to come as we head into early next week, with a lot of unsettled conditions, but also those unsettled conditions coming in a very cold air mass. So we are going to be seeing a lot of snow showers in the north, and could even see quite a lot of widespread snow elsewhere as well. So, as I said, we'll have to see exactly how it does play out. We'll have to wait another couple of days for the UKV to be in the timeline or the time frame of the winteriness early next week. But we are seeing the signs now of that snowfall arriving, or at least the potential for that snowfall arriving. And you can see on the upper air temperatures, really cold air mass, -8 to -10 degrees at 850 HPA arriving. Look at the dew points, all below freezing, again indicating anything falling out the sky has the potential to be wintry of nature. But of course, with this sort of air mass, quite moderated from the North Atlantic, it's going to be the 2-metre temperatures, the surface temperatures, that will decide whether we see snowfall in places, whether it will just be a bit of falling snow or will it accumulate. It will all depend on how cold those surface temperatures do get, and there is a lot of uncertainty with that, because it does all depend on the exact isobar positioning, because how quickly does that cold air get here, and how much does it linger, and whether we see any milder incursions. So these 2-metre temperatures early next week are going to be very variable, and we'll be able to hint on those for the weekend here, and you'll be able to see that cold air mass arriving. So you can see today, though, temperatures are generally average to above average, around that 6 to 7 degree mark further northwards, maybe around 8 to 10 degree mark further southwards as well. As we head through into tomorrow, you can see quite mild in the south, actually 10 to 12 degrees, slightly milder than today, with that milder sector pushing in with that weather front. But as we head towards Friday, where it's slightly drier conditions, it will inevitably be slightly colder, maybe 7 or 8 degrees, but again, nothing spectacularly cold at all. And as we into Saturday, a mild wedge of air initially, but through the evening, turning quite cold, and through early hours of Sunday, quite a widespread frost appearing, especially in northern areas, but even in central and southern areas, in rural parts, more urban areas, maybe 2 or 3 degrees. But through Sunday, those temperatures won't rise all too much, maybe 4 to 6 degrees, a lot colder further northwards. And then as we head into early hours of Monday, a widespread frost starts to take over completely in the north, and could come further south as well. Again, all depending on cloud amounts and the exact air masses, how progressive it is. So you can see it is turning incredibly cold early next week, and later this week into the weekend. And of course, we are not quite in the time frame for any major hazards coming, but there is the potential there, as we'll see on the long-range models now. So if you do have a look at the GFS and see what that is showing over the course of the next couple of weeks, you can see a westerly flow at the moment. No real signs of anything cold, but watch what happens to this low. It clears to our east and pulls in a northerly wind for Sunday. Now you'd think here low pressure would just come tumbling back off the Atlantic, but instead high pressure stays in the North Atlantic, and we see a low dive in from Greenland. And this is why I said it all depends on positioning and exact isobar direction, because mild air will try and get wrapped around in this low pressure system, but again, all depends on its exact positioning. But here, cold air comes in, a northerly wind arrives, and then what happens later that week is what develops within these very low heights. Small little low pressure systems like that across central southern England could produce heavy snow on its northern edge, as we'll see on the GEM in a minute, which does produce a big system that does produce very heavy snow. Now it does clear through, and eventually by sort of Wednesday, Thursday time, we're into a westerly flow. So sort of a 4 or 5 day cold spell there from the GFS, a little bit progressive with it. Other models hang on to that cold air for longer, and then we just go flat westerly and go back to the unsettled mild westerly conditions, sweeping away any remnants of any colder weather. So it's very much a hit and miss cold spell coming in for a sort of 3, 4, 5 days, and then just to disappearing completely. One thing the GFS has trended over the course of the last couple of days with a lot of its runs is trying to build northern blocking around day 10 to day 14. Again, it's remained in the day 10 to day 14, so I wouldn't put too much weight into it, but it keeps trying to build a high pressure system towards Greenland to Scandinavia, again trying to produce colder weather towards the end of January, and again we'll just have to see what happens with that. Again, don't want to focus on that because that is way out in advance. For the time being, it does look generally westerly with this north to northwesterly wind coming in for 3 to 5 days this weekend into early next week, producing really quite cold conditions. Now, if you run it back and have a look at the air masses, it's probably best to put on the potential equivalent temperatures. Anything sort of dark blue is very cold air, and then you can see the other increments pushing in. So you can see quite cold air arrives early Sunday, and then we see a brief wedge of milder air there. Now, that could produce snow where the cold air hangs on, and again, all depends on the positioning of the low. But for eventually, much colder air does wrap in around that, and we go very cold all the way to about Wednesday, Thursday time before milder air sweeps back through. But of course, we have to keep an eye on the centre of the lows and how much mild air does get wrapping around it and where that mild sector is. Because if that mild sector is significant but stays just offshore, it will pump moisture straight into that cold air and produce heavy snow. But if that mild sector's over land and it's more moderated with the cold air, then we could see a situation where it's cold but raining, bit of sleet and snow over the higher ground. So again, still a lot of uncertainty, but there will be likely significant winteriness in places. Now have a look at the GEM run, which is the most interesting run today. Westerly winds at the moment. Low pressure arrives from the north, but we have to keep an eye on this low here, exiting Greenland. It dives to our south there, coming out of Greenland, dives to our south, and you can see it's much further westwards than the GFS produces it. And on its northern edge, it produces significant snow before eventually going to a northerly wind and keeping us pretty cold until day 10. Now, if we do look at the 850 HPA temperatures, you can see cold, and then as we head into early next week, big milder sector wraps in around it. But the mild air lingers perhaps across southern England with the cold air boundary through the Midlands and northern England. Again, very uncertain exact positioning of snowfall, but we'll have a look at its raw precipitation chart in a minute. But this on its northern edge would produce a major snow event. Again, all down to positioning of the centre of low and that milder wedge, which is not going to be deciphered at least for another few days. Again, we're looking at sort of day 6 lead time here, which for the general pattern is pretty reliable. But when we're deciding by sort of 50 to 100 miles of a milder sector, it's not particularly accurate. So things can change, but this does produce major snow, and then the air wraps in around it, and it would go really quite cold, and wintry showers would come in from the north. Now, if you go to the raw precipitation chart for this, if we do head to Sunday, you can see wintry showers coming in from the north. Not so unusual, a lot of heavy snow in places in the usual spots for a northerly wind, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Northern England, and maybe North Sea coast and Irish Sea coast, and coming inland in small little systems. But watch what happens later next week. A big weather front pushes into that cold air and widespread heavy snow quite widely, even into central southern England here. Apart from coastal areas, heavy snow falling overnight into early hours of Tuesday, with significant snow lingering as that mild sector doesn't push northwards, it pushes eastwards and off into Europe, and it gives 12, maybe even 18 hours of heavy snow in places, and wouldn't be surprised to see build-up of 10 to 20 centimetres over certain portions. Now you can see the uncertainty with this, because look at that, -8 degree isotherm is just across sort of northeast England, but -1 or -2 across central southern England, and it's on that dividing line we'd see the significant snow. So again, we'll have to keep an eye on this. Don't want to take these charts too literally at this lead time, but this is the potential that there is there next week, and I do think a situation like this is quite likely, but it's where the snow and rain line sets up. That's what we've got to decipher, and it could turn out it's just over higher ground, or it could turn out to be a definitive line like this is showing, where it's sort of through central southern England, or more towards coastal areas here. So again, we'll have to see how it does play out. Now, if we do look at the ECMWF, This doesn't produce as much snow, but it's a more prolonged cold spell here. Again, a northerly wind starts to arrive through Sunday. We see that low try to drop out, and it actually could produce some heavy snow across the far south, but maybe slightly too far south to give widespread winteriness, but it would keep us in the much colder air, and all the way till day 10, it keeps us fairly cold, low pressure running in off the Atlantic, but keeping that higher heights towards southern Greenland, keeping a northerly wind there. Now, if you look at the upper air temperatures, see the -5 line arrives, milder air tries to push into the far south. That could actually produce quite heavy snow in the far south. If you are across central southern England counties, this is the run if you want heavy snow, with that centre of the low through sort of Guernsey, Jersey and the Channel. Again, snow on its leading edge. But beyond that, we stay in the very cold air. Milder air does push in for a time before we do rush back into colder air at day 10. So a brief milder sector there, perhaps also Friday next week, before it does turn colder once again. So all three runs showing cold north and northwesterly winds. The exact timeline of it is uncertain. The exact positioning of any milder sectors is uncertain. Any snowfall is very uncertain, but there is major potential there. Now, if you look at the ensemble members, you can see how it is mild the next sort of 3 days or so, or up and down, and then it goes very cold towards weekend, a good 5+ degrees below average, and it stays below average for about 5 days for the majority of the GFS ensemble members, bring us back towards average and keep us around average. There are some runs that go colder, but there are equally other runs that go milder. Now, the ECMWF ensemble members are definitely more favoured for a slightly longer colder spell than the GFS are. These are showing, as I said, about a 4 or 5 day spell. The ECMWF, definitely 4 or 5 days, maybe 6, 7, 8, depending on the run. Now, got to keep an eye on this spike here. That's that milder sector, with some producing very mild air, others producing much colder air, but all producing quite big precipitation spikes, and quite a few ensemble members producing heavy snow. So this is what we've got to keep an eye on. Potential for heavy snow through the 16th to the 18th in places, and of course there will be convective snow around, but that is not going to be forecasted by the ensemble members particularly well. You can see the dew points are cold, all around freezing, but as I said, it's the 2 metre temperatures, because we've got very mild air around at the moment. The ground temperature is going to be very cold. To get those down, you need a good few days of frosts. So that's, if you want a lot of lying snow, you're going to need these frosts in on the weekend. And the air temperatures generally look low single digits. Not quite as cold as the cold spell in December, simply because that was days of relentless cold air. This is very much going to be a snappy cold spell, but it could be even more significant with a lot more moisture around and instability. So again, can't take these 2 metre temperatures too literally. Again, it will be dependent on precipitation, cloud amounts, snowfall, evaporative cooling, things like that. But these are the rough ballpark, maybe 3, 4, 5 days of temperatures not getting much above 5 degrees in even the warmest spots like London. If you look at Glasgow, for example, and look at the upper air temperatures, widely below average, and there will be a lot of snow around, quite significant snow spikes. And again, these are not really taking into account the convection that will be coming in, which is not well modelled by the ensemble members. So there will be even more snow around. And as I said, if we do look at the ECMWF ensemble members, definitely favouring slightly prolonged colder spell here. At the 20th point, there are quite a few runs that go milder, but still quite a few that keep us cooler, and it means that sort of transition to milder conditions takes 2 or 3 days instead of, sort of 1 day that the GFS was going for. So the ECMWF ensemble members here go cold on the 15th and stay cold to at least the 19th, 20th, maybe the 21st or longer. But we'll have to see how it does develop. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you have enjoyed. Make sure you stay safe out there and all the wind and rain over the course of the next few days. If you are looking forward to colder weather, it's looking very likely it's coming this weekend into early next week, and there is a real risk of significant snowfall in places, especially in the north and over the higher ground. But as we've seen here, if we do see milder sectors and warm fronts bumping into that cold air, we could see significant snowfall pretty much anywhere come next week. As I said, we'll have to see what happens. Make sure you keep up to date with the videos and, of course, the weather warnings. And I do suspect there will be quite a few snow and ice warnings issued come later this week. And we'll just have to see how next week does play out. So as I said, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. And I'll see you again for another video soon.